Hi, in this lesson we're going to learn about the data processing architecture. One of the traditional or ways where people used to process data usually comes from the data warehouse world. Usually when people things start work was on-prem, you have your operational data store, ODS, right? This is the likes of MySQL, Oracle, let's say MySQL, right? If you remember from the history lesson, we said usually people move the data to the data warehouse. Now, actually, I put it like as a one line, but what happens exactly is they used to move the data to a staging database first. We call it the staging. And from the staging database, this is where you merge your tables, you do all processing, you validate your data, you clean it up, you do all the necessary or all the needed for the data to be in the right shape and format so you can then ingest it into your data warehouse, right? That's exactly what happened. You move through a stage. The first stage, we call it extract, transform, and load. Call it ETL, to extract, transform, and load. But if you notice here, you really need two databases essentially. One that does all the processing, the cleaning, the cleansing, and everything, and one that has the final result, which is the data warehouse, right? Now, when we have detached compute from storage and we have the cloud, do you really need to do ETL, like extract, transform, and load? Should you do the should you do the transform part outside of the data lake or outside of the lake house? Not so much. Let me clarify what I mean by that. This is your source system as it is, ODS, right? Because your compute and your storage now detached and they are all in the data lake, why don't you just ingest data as is? Nothing, like no transformation whatsoever, just data as coming from the source, right? And put it here in a layer. And we will call this layer the raw, because this is just the raw data. This is the data that exactly received from the source, not touched at all, right? We call it the raw layer for a good reason, because it's like exactly raw layer. Now we are now in the boundary of the data lake or the data lake house. We are inside now. Data is landed there in the storage, cloud storage. And then once you are there, you can start a cluster or start a machine or a compute, let's say of 4 nodes like this, that treat this data and then transform it to a more cleaned, like this format, the target format here. We call this layer the cleaned layer or the refined layer. And some people actually call the raw layer bronze. And this one is a silver. But basically bronze layer, silver layer, and this is all the cleaned data, right? Which is good. So now you have your data cleaned and there. Now, if you notice about this, this is still the extract, you do it from here, but this is no longer ETL. You actually loaded the data, extracted and immediately loaded. Then later on you did the transformation. So we call this ELT. Extract, load, and transform. So we have ETL, the traditional one from data warehouse world, where you've got the transformation step outside of your data warehouse. And in the data lake house world or data lake world, you don't need ETL, you need ELT, extract, then immediately load, and then you do the transformation inside. There is a final step here where you actually also create a cluster to just build some summaries and some aggregations of your clean data, right? We call it the gold layer. The gold layer. So the gold layer is basically an aggregation on top of the clean data. So for example, let's say data is coming from your I don't know, orders table. You are a retailer, you have orders table, so have users. This is your table. So you have user or customer, actually customer, let's say A, customer B, customer C, and product X, product Y, product Z, and then price. Next 10, 20, 30, right? Just a simple a simple table here. We've got your table. This is your table. Now, let me add a CD, and this is product. Product is null, bad data, right? And the price is, I don't know, 50. Now, in the row layer, this is the data that you will see exactly in the row layer, with all the good data, with all the bad data. Nothing touched, exactly as is. In the silver layer, we're gonna reject the bad data. That's the first thing you do. You say, okay, I shouldn't have any product with a null name. That's a bad quality data, so you remove it. So your T or the silver layer, you don't have this row anymore. On the gold layer, this is where you build some aggregation. So let's say how many products that user A code. So you're gonna have create a new table called top products, for example. So say product X has been bought 20 times last month, for example. This is an aggregation. Useful when you display a dashboard. Like you want to have a bar chart like this, right? And you can then build this bar chart on a dashboard and display it. So you say product X, someone bought it 20 times, product Y 50 times, and so on. So charting, analytics, and all this. So the gold layer purpose is about building some aggregation, pre-computed aggregation to making this. And this is pretty much, we call this the Medallion architecture. Medallion architecture. And one of the most used kind of architecture for data processing in the lakehouse. You build your data in 3 layers, bronze, silver, and gold. You can call it any name. So bronze, silver, and gold, raw, cleaned, refined, production, product data, whatever. Just to note some usually split this raw layer here into 2 parts. One called the landing zone, and one called the ingested zone. It's just like split to convert data to a suitable format and so on and so forth. But it's just one layer at the end. It's called the raw layer. So this is what I mean with the Medallion architecture. We're going to use it all the way through in every way. So whenever you work with data, probably the Medallion architecture will be the one you would use. So this is it, and thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next lesson.